So you're not closing deals because your offer is just a number, right? You're not actually solving somebody's problem. And the reason you're not solving somebody's problem is because you're not digging for the problem, right? Which is the most important part of the sales structure, of the sales system. So we all know the 4 pillars, right? Motivation, timeline, condition, price. Notice the order that I put it in. Motivation, timeline, condition, price, right? Honestly, condition should come last, dead last, because I see so many people who are going condition first, and that's the last thing that matters, right? We talked about that in one of the last videos, how so many people, they make these conversations strictly on condition when that's last, right? That these sellers can fucking lie to you and tell you that the house is in perfect condition, and when you go to see it, it looks like a horror house. Not a whorehouse, a horror house. That's a fucking haunted house. Hoarder house. Hoarder house. Yeah. Right. Could be a whorehouse too, right? Either one. Because it literally does not matter, right? Condition is one. When you buy a house and you're expecting to buy a house as is, what's going to happen? We're going to do a fix and flip, right? So we know automatically work is going to be needed to be done. Again, I want to talk about, because so many people have that limited belief though. They have that excuse that condition is the easier route to go with. People like to start having a conversation about condition because they think it's going to open the seller up and they think it's going to get the seller to talk, when in reality, it doesn't matter. You're just wasting the seller's time and you're sounding like everybody else who's calling them, right? So what else do we have? We have timeline. Timeline is very important, right? Timeline is the second most important part of the sales system. And that actually is because it ties into the motivation, right? So if somebody wants to sell their house, somebody needs to sell their house fast, there's usually a reason why. So let's figure out why they need to sell their house fast, right? So timeline is super important. Price is important as well, but we can negotiate with the price, right? We can negotiate with the price, and it's always, if they need a certain amount of money, it's always why. Right? Like, why do they need this certain amount of money? What are they looking to accomplish? Right? And that all brings us back to their motivation. What has them looking to sell this property? It is not the fact that they want to sell this property. It's not the fact that they need to sell this property. Just why? How did we get here? Right? So in order for us to get this information, we need to ask the right questions. And when you're in the motivation bucket, when you're in the section of the problem finding, right? When you're actually figuring out what is going on with this seller, you need to stay here until we figure out all 5 parts, right? And actually put together a 5-part checklist to figure out all 5 parts of the motivation. If you do not have all 5 parts of the motivation, it is important for you to play dumb, act confused as to why this person is even on the phone with you in the first place, right? So again, the most important part of our sales structure is figuring out why the hell are they on the phone with us in the first place? Why are they wasting their time on the phone if they don't need to sell this property, right? So let's figure out, do they need to sell this property? Why do they need to sell this property? And here are the 5 parts of the motivation that will get us to know if they're actually motivated or not, right? So it's where they at now, right? What is the current situation that they're facing? They need to sell this property because they're in foreclosure, right? Like what's going on? So let's just say they're in foreclosure, right? How'd they get in this position? So how did you get in foreclosure? I know you may be thinking that is a personal question to ask. That is a very tough question to ask. And it's all about the tonality and your confidence when you ask these questions, and empathy, right? You need to actually show this person that you care. They need to feel like you actually care when you ask these questions, because if you don't, you will get pushback. A lot of times when we get the motivation, they just give us that service level motivation, right? And if you stay at the surface level, you'll never, ever truly get to the real problem, right? And what's really going on, so where they at now is usually that surface level motivation. It's usually what are they telling everybody else is going on, if anybody even cares to ask. Right? What are they telling everybody else? That's the surface level motivation. Next, we want to figure out, how did they get in this position, right? So if they're in pre-foreclosure, right, did they lose their job? Did their wife leave them? Husband leave them? How did they get into this position to where they cannot keep up with the mortgage, right? And then again, the empathy part, that second part of that question is how are they holding up, right? How are they feeling? Because we want to show them that we care. The third is how long have they been in this position, right? So again, back to the pre-foreclosure situation, how long have they been missing payments, right? It's been 3 months, 4 months. Tells us what they've been going through and how long they've been going through it. Well, it's important because what we're doing right now is it's called twisting the knife, right? So we want to dig deeper because we want to get to the true reason, right? And once we know, like, okay, this guy hasn't been paying for 3 months, right? And let's say his mortgage payment is $2,000 a month. That tells us we know now that he's behind $6,000. Right, and we can just get more pain, more information. So part 4 is what have they done to get out of this position? Have they spoken with other investors? Have they tried to list it with the realtor? Have they gotten any offers? Where have the other offers been coming in at, right? What have they done so far to pull themselves out of this position? And number 5 is what happens if they don't get out of this position? Like, what's going to happen? Are they going to just keep the house? They're just going to sit there, right? And this is one of the last questions to ask to know if this person is actually motivated or not. Because if you ask them, so what's going to happen if nobody comes up to your price? Or what happens if you can't sell this property? And they just say no. They just say, I'll just keep it, right? It's no big deal. Then you know they're probably not that motivated, right? Somebody who's motivated, they will say, they need to sell this property, right? Them not selling it is not an option. And they couldn't even fathom the thought. And still, we want to get what would happen. I want them to tell me what would happen if they cannot sell this property, right? So it can sink in. And that's a lot with a lot of this, right? Why we're asking these questions and why we're digging deeper is so the seller can hear their problem come out of their own mouth, right? Because a big part of the problem finding step is we're not only finding the problem for ourselves, but we're also finding the problem for them as well. Because a lot of times people are in denial and they don't even realize that they're going through what they're going through. And it takes them to say it out of their own mouth for them to finally understand that they're going through a problem and they need to take somebody's help. Right, so those are the 5 parts of the motivation and how to dig deeper. Right, most people think, motivation, timeline, condition, price. That's all you need. They think the 4 pillars is all you need. When really that motivation, that's just a surface level motivation. That's just getting it started. Right, we need to dig deeper to get those 4 other parts and really understand this seller. So if you want access to this 5-part motivation checklist, make sure you jump in the Dog Pound Discord. The link is in the bio below or description below. Huh? Bio works, description works, same shit. Just make sure you click it because the graphic will be in there. I'll see you next time. We out of here.
They tryna talk, they not in a room. I've been so real, I'm that to the